I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. I have Andre Stackhouse who's joining me tonight. He is the campaign manager of Whole Washington. Welcome back, Andre. It's been a minute.
Thank you. So soon. I really appreciate the amount of coverage you've given this movement.
Thanks so much. All right, guys, for those of you just joining, welcome to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays for the Roundtable and Friday for the Sabby Show. And you can catch me here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. All right, so guys, what are we going to talk about tonight? I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. So tonight we're going to talk about The View is missing Republican hosts. What is going on at The View and what are they having troubles with? It seems like they cannot seem to replace Meghan McCain's spot. I'm going to get into that tonight. We're also going to talk about Biden signs the defense budget, which is not good for us. And of course, the fight for Medicare for all. Andre is here to represent Whole Washington. I'm actually going to go ahead and get started with that first. So, Andre, the first time you came on here, that was actually the beginning of the Medicare for All marches.
Yeah, feels like a pretty long time ago now. But at that time, was very early talks in sort of organizing marches across. I guess it ended up being well over 50. I can't even remember, 60. Way more than we ever thought we'd get. At that time, we might have had 3. So Seattle was one of the first of 3 marches planned on July 24th in 2021 in support of Medicare for All, really trying to prove that there is a real grassroots movement behind this thing, something that I think needed to happen because so much of it had been about, these presidential candidates, these Bernie Sanders, these bills in Congress, and so that's all great. But we really got out there in the streets to show, no, this is something that we, the people, really want, and we're willing to get off our asses to make it happen.
Absolutely. For those who don't know, Andre is a part of a group of activists out of Washington State. They're called Whole Washington. They've been on here before. They've been on RBN. Laura Felding, I think, was the first person that came on my show. This was months ago to talk about their action there. And they are still fighting and they're trying to get universal health care in Washington State. And Andre's here tonight to talk about an update about that. And there's also a video I have too that I want to play for you that they have. So Andre, where do things stand now? I know you're trying to get Medicare for all or universal health care in Washington State on the ballot for 2022.
Yeah, well, I guess I always like to start by saying that, we really do believe in Medicare for all, Medicare for the entire country, and we consider our work to be part of the Medicare for all movement. So we are working, our primary project right now is a ballot initiative here in Washington State to establish a Medicare for all style system that would cover everyone in Washington. And we believe in both a legislative approach and a ballot initiative approach, but the ballot initiative is very special because it means that there's a lot fewer ways that the process can effectively obstruct the work that we're trying to do. So, we don't need to get committee chairs to give it a hearing. We don't need to deal with a veto. We can simply collect the signatures to put it on the ballot, and then we can vote on it and pass it. And so right now, the plan is to run a ballot initiative in 2022. Signature gathering would begin in around April, and so we're planning on an April 15th launch date. And yeah, the name of the game right now is basically recruitment and awareness. So we need a lot of people to get this out there, and then we need to make sure that people really know what this is going to be about. Let them know that we are going to ask for your signature. You're going to hear from us, right? And you're also going to hear from the industry, and they're going to say a lot of things, right? But we need to have a real conversation about this as a policy and the sort of material effects that it's going to have, right? Who's going to benefit? Who's going to get health care? What's going to change? And the answer is, for us, for the people of Washington State, it's a very good deal. And if we have an honest conversation about it, that will be very clear.
Absolutely. Miravina said this would be huge for Washington State. There are so many families in need of universal health care from cities to rural areas. So proud of all of your hard work.
Appreciate
Thanks so
it.
much for that, Miravina. Thanks so much for that. For those who don't know, I want to talk about ballot initiatives for a second before I get to the video. That is actually how we legalized marijuana here in Massachusetts. It was a ballot initiative. So we decided to get it done through the states. And you'll see oftentimes Roger Meadows, he'll put in the chat here that ballot initiatives are the way to go to try to do things on a local level instead of waiting for the federal government to do what we need them to do. And ballot initiatives can really work. And I'm going to do a whole separate panel about that, the states that already have this in place and what you can do to help. Now, Andre, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I believe when Laura came on months ago, she was talking about the number of signatures that you have to get. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and this is broken down pretty well in the video, but we are setting a goal for ourselves of 400,000, and it's a big number, it's a round number, nice and easy to get in your head and remember. And what I'll say is that 400,000 is not just the number of required signatures that we need. It includes a substantial buffer, in fact, to be exact, a 23% buffer to account for things like invalidated signatures, double counts, little things that can make it so that, ultimately when it gets assessed by the Secretary of State, right, you need to make sure that you have enough valid signatures, not just total signatures. So we've set a very high goal for ourselves, in part because we think it's achievable, and because we think by sort of including that buffer, it makes us a lot more likely to get over the finish line.
Absolutely. So I want to go ahead and play that video so you guys can see what they've been up to and what's going on now. Let me go ahead and cue that. Going to share my screen. Oh, I love this song, Andre. I had this for one of my background songs. I know this
Royalty-free
song.
music.
I know. This is by Ben Sound. Yes, of course. I love Ben. All right. I'm going to stop talking here and we're going to go ahead and get into the video. So here we go.
Washington State is home to over 7.6 million people. If it was a country, its GDP per capita would be higher than wealthy nations like Australia, Germany, and Norway. But while all of these countries have free universal healthcare systems, 6.6% of Washington State, or over 450,000 people, have no health insurance at all. What can we do to ensure that everyone has comprehensive healthcare no matter what? Or what can we do to provide healthcare that's always there? The answer is universal public health insurance. Senate Bill 5204 would create a universal public health insurance plan called the Whole Washington Health Trust. That plan would cover all Washington residents. That's right, everyone, regardless of age, income, or employment status, everyone's covered. It also covers everything. In fact, it's a huge expansion beyond traditional Medicare because it includes dental, vision, hearing, mental health, reproductive health, and much more. For a full list, go to Whole Washington's website. And it also costs between 5 and 10 billion less than our current healthcare system every year. And remember, that's without leaving anyone uninsured or in medical debt. So how do we pass it? Well, in Washington state, we have ballot initiatives. Ballot initiatives are a process in which citizens can collect a required number of signatures to put a law on the ballot to be either approved or rejected by a direct vote of the people. This is the process we use to legalize cannabis and marriage equality. So the question is, what about universal health care? According to the Washington State Constitution, the number of signatures we need to collect is 8% or more of the votes cast for governor in the last election. How many is that? Well, just under 2.5 million people voted for governor in 2020. 8% of that is just under 325,000. However, the Secretary of State recommends an additional 15 to 20% cushion to account for invalid signatures. For instance, maybe someone who isn't a registered voter or who isn't from Washington State signs our petition. So, an additional 23% cushion gives us a goal of 400,000. 400,000 total signatures to put universal public health insurance on the ballot. One thing you might notice about this is that it's actually fewer than the number of people who are uninsured. So, how are we going to collect the signatures? That's where the whole Washington signature captains come in. The idea is very simple. We recruit 800 captains, and we have them each commit to leading the collection of 500 signatures. What do we mean by leading? Well, the signature captains don't necessarily need to personally collect every signature. It's just on them to make sure that it happens. This is a leadership position, which means you will have support if you need it. Why 800 captains? Well, it's a big number, but it's doable. We know that there are thousands of supporters of Medicare for All and universal health care in Washington state. So the question is, can we turn 800 of them into signature captains? It's likely more captains than we would actually need to get the signatures, but we consider that a good thing because it forces us to focus on recruitment. Remember, we don't just need to get this on the ballot, we need to win the election. So it's important that we bring in as many people as we can. Why 500 signatures each? Well, it's totally achievable by a single person. Anyone can do it, but it's a large enough number that it naturally encourages the formation of teams, which is something we really want to encourage captains to do to make these goals so much more achievable. But even without a full team, this can be done in just 10 to 15 hours. So we really want to emphasize that you can do this. You can do this. And one way we're going to help captains succeed at collecting their 500 signatures is by making sure they have support from other captains through a buddy system. So as part of your onboarding, you're going to be paired with a big buddy and you're going to be paired with a little buddy. And just like that, every signature captain will have a support system of 2 other people in the program that they can go to anytime they need help. Leading up to signature gathering, we're going to be very focused on recruiting volunteers and assigning them to captains to form small teams. Depending on the availability of volunteers and the needs of each captain, those teams may look quite different. Some captains might not need a team at all. Our goal is for every captain to have a team that they feel will make them successful. Now, sometime before signature gathering begins, each captain will be receiving a box containing everything they need to get their signatures. We're calling it the Signature Captain Field Kit because we imagine that you could simply hand the box to a volunteer and it would provide clear step-by-step instructions for completing the signature captain commitment. Inside that box will be at least 25 petition sheets and 5 boards for you and your team, as well as the Signature Captain Field Guide that contains all sorts of practical information like how to organize a shift, how to recruit volunteers to your team, how to do the data entry, how to send the petition sheets in. And of course, Every box will contain a hand-knitted red beret as a gift and a symbol of solidarity donated by a volunteer craftivist in support of universal healthcare. So, with a team, a box of sheets, a field guide for how to gather signatures, and a red beret to look great doing it, every signature captain will be well prepared to get universal healthcare out in front of voters and on the ballot. The filing deadline for our ballot initiative is in March, and signature gathering will begin shortly after in April. The campaign is nearly 9 months long, and signed petition sheets must be postmarked in late December. Everything before signature gathering begins we're calling the pre-campaign, and our main goals will be to recruit and train the 800 signature captains, plan shifts and signature gathering events, and build pre-awareness of the upcoming initiative campaign. Once signature gathering begins, you have a lot of time to reach your commitment. Using all the time available, that comes out to just 15 signatures a week, probably less than an hour of work per week. Once we get the sheets in, the real campaign begins. Election day will be November 2023. So, you're all on board with the plan and you want to know, how do I become a signature captain? Well, the first thing to know is that anyone can do it. You don't need to be 18. You don't need to be a registered voter. You don't even need to be from Washington State. If you're willing and able to make the commitment we need, then you can be a signature captain. Step 1, you fill out the signature captain interest form, and someone from Whole Washington will be in touch with you soon. There's a link at the end of the video and in the description. The next step is to attend a signature captain orientation to learn about the ballot initiative and the signature captain program. Once you understand the program and are willing to make the core commitment, you're ready to sign the signature captain contract. The core commitment is leading the collection of the 500 signatures, working with a small team of volunteers and participating in the buddy system, ensuring the data entry for those signatures, which is critical for keeping us on track with our goals and finding new volunteers, and last, ensuring that the petition sheets get sent into Whole Washington, where they'll eventually be sent off to the Secretary of State. So if you understand the commitment and are ready to make it, then you're ready to sign the contract, and congratulations, you're officially a Whole Washington signature captain. And that's really all there is to it. That's how 800 well-organized signature captains in a bit of planning can put universal healthcare on the ballot, can win healthcare that's always there, and can make Washington whole. So, thanks for watching. If you'd like to learn more or get involved, you can fill out the signature captain interest form, and someone from Whole Washington will be in touch with you soon. You can also keep track of the campaign by following Whole Washington on Twitter @Whole Washington. And if you're watching this as part of orientation, thank you so much for stepping up. We're very excited to work with you.
That is awesome, Andre. Andre, I have to tell you, that is the most organized action I have seen.
Well, I appreciate that. It took us a long time to get to the point where we could produce something like that. We've been doing this for a long time, so it takes a long time to sort of design an onboarding process, right? Design the right pitch, right? The right combination of like information, but not too much information, right? How do you make this appealing to people to bring them in and get them involved, right? There's so much time to learn and to debate and all of that stuff, right? But you have to take that first step that's like, yeah, I want to be involved with this.
Absolutely. And Eric actually just put the link in the chat to sign up to be a signature captain. And I want to make sure I heard this correctly. You don't have to be from Washington State to do this.
That is correct. So we have already a few signature captains who aren't from Washington State. And, the way I think of it is we're trying to do something that's never been done before. And that really means that we're not in a position to turn away anyone who wants to help and be involved. 800 signature captains is a huge number. And I mentioned in the video that it's probably more than we actually need. And what that means is, yes, we need volunteers on the ground here in Washington, right? We need hundreds of them, right? But that does not mean that we cannot use support from people out of state. And there's a lot of zip codes here in Washington, right? And there are zip codes we don't have any captain in, right? Right? So we can tell someone who wants to be involved, right? Well, here's your zip code, right? You have a phone, you have the internet, right? Make some calls, find people, help us organize in that zip code. So there is a lot of potential for that sort of thing. There's also social media. And Whole Washington has really been organizing people into sort of more of a cohesive social media strategy and small social media teams. So anyone out there on Twitter who wants to get involved, you can DM Whole Washington and we'll put you on one of those teams and you'll be involved in some of these, some of the things that we're trying to get out there, like, clips of this video that we've been tweeting around the last couple days. And then other things like phone banking, data entry, right? So there's a lot of people who also, are not necessarily able to, collect signatures because, perhaps they're mobility impaired or something like that, right? And so
Right.
again, that's why we need people to like host our orientation sessions and make graphics for us and make phone calls, help us with fundraising. There's so much work to do, and so really, if you want to be involved at all, we have a role for you. The signature captain role is kind of one of the most front center direct roles to really get involved, but it's not the only way.
Absolutely. Brandy said we will be following their example in Arkansas. I already have people signing up for the Arkansas. I don't know why I can't say it tonight. Arkansas chapter. That's good to know. Thanks so much for that, Brandy. Um, Robert said that big pharma and health insurance providers will spend millions of dollars to oppose the ballot measure. Yes, that can happen. I will say though, if it's one place that I have a lot of, I guess, faith that this can happen, it's Washington State because look at what happened with Shama Sawant, right? Like they spent, sorry, you guys, I don't know why my phone put that to the side. They will spend like millions of dollars, or they tried to stop Shama Sawant. And you see, she still beat the recall.
Yeah.
So I think I said this before a couple months ago. If there's two places that are going to get this done, it's probably going to be Washington State or New York, because New York is trying to pass something somewhat similar as well. We tried to get something like this going in Massachusetts, and unfortunately, there is one person that is still preventing that from happening, from it being brought to the floor for a vote.
Yeah.
And we've protested for that here too.
So a couple things I wanted to mention there. So the millions of dollars that big pharma is going to raise to fight this, like of course, right? And I don't know who thinks we're going to win anything without fighting and defeating big pharma, right? So we know that they will show up and fight statewide public options, right? So that's how seriously they take state legislation, right? Any kind of expansion to healthcare at all, they're going to show up and fight. So we need to just be aware of that and have a plan to win, right? So 800 signature captains, right, who are well organized, geographically diverse across the state. I mean, that's going to really allow us to have a face-to-face conversation with voters that will allow us to defeat, propaganda from big pharma. You mentioned the right-wing recall and the Shama Sawant defeating that, and I just want to say, yes, incredible feat, right? And so we have this in our DNA out here in Washington State and in Seattle, the ability to take on large interests like Boeing, Microsoft, Amazon, and win. It's very difficult, right? It's a lot of trench warfare. The fight is constant, but I will say that the coalition that came out and won the day for Shama Sawant included Socialist Alternative, included Seattle DSA, and Shama herself and Seattle DSA are both supporters of Whole Washington's campaign, collected signatures, for our last time we attempted this ballot initiative. And so we already have, the beginnings of the coalition that can take on and defeat Big Pharma. You mentioned New York and Boston. I just want to say that there is so many great statewide organizations doing work like Whole Washington, way more than you even realize. Whole Washington, I think, is probably one of the more developed and better known ones, depending on where you are geographically. But New York, the New York Health Act really great organizing there. They've got some paid staffers, so they've got a serious operation out there. And then AB 1400 CalCare, I think, has some pretty robust organizing behind it. And then I always want to give a shout out to the folks out in Maine because they're the only other ones running a ballot initiative like we are. And, Sabby, I'm really, really excited that you're going to do some coverage of ballot initiatives because Maine, I'm sure they passed ranked choice voting by ballot
Yep.
initiative. And I believe that one of the lead organizers of that effort is behind their healthcare campaign now. So, these things
Wow.
can really happen. And the other thing that I often say is, if we really bring this to every state, right, where we have strong campaigns in every state, that's, two, three, four, 5 ways that we start splitting big pharma's attention and resources. They have to fight all of us, right? So I think that we need to recognize that all of these campaigns are connected in a wider mass movement for universal public health care in the United States, and that the more that we can support each other, the stronger we're all going to be.
Absolutely. And I want to remind everyone, I know some people want this done through the federal government. I'll be honest with you, I don't think that's going to happen. Obviously, Joe Biden has been very vocal about not signing. Like, if it comes across his desk, he'll veto it. But when we talk about the ballot initiatives and getting this done through the states, one thing I want you to keep in mind is that when it came to legalizing marijuana in this country, that's how we've been doing it, is through the states. And more states have added onto that list. Like Virginia's on that list now. So I think it started with Colorado, and then it one by one more states have been joined, and eventually it's going to get to the point where it's all of them, right? So I think Virginia signing on kind of broke that southern barrier to get them on. That was huge. So this is only going to spread.
Mhm.
And I think this is one of those issues where this again should not be a left right issue. There are a lot of people in this country, whether they're conservative or Democrat, that really think and really want everyone to have health care in this country. And I think if we stop framing it in a left right way, we can get more people on board with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, on that note, I think that, we at Whole Washington often talk about the story of Saskatchewan and Canada and how Medicare in Canada was passed in really one small province and then kind of kicked off this healthcare revolution that eventually had it expanded to cover all of Canada. It's a really interesting story. It was actually a socialist movement. It was a socialist party and a socialist governor of that province. And there's a documentary about it called Bitter Medicine that we screen sometimes. But I think the other point that I often bring up, and I think people forget, right, is this force pulls in both directions because where did we get the Affordable Care Act, right? It was from a state-based healthcare system based around an individual mandate in Massachusetts. I'm sure you're very familiar. So, you know, the question is, what what options are going to be on the table the next time we have a serious shot at healthcare reform at the federal level, right? The 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 system we're going to get is probably going to be one taken from a state, right? And if we have a well-functioning single-payer system in one or two states, it's going to be politically much more challenging for Congress or the president to push anything else, right? Because we're going to say, look, why wouldn't you choose the ones that are obviously working the best?
Yep. No, I agree. There is a documentary also. I think Kenny Ballantyne is working on this, Andre, about healthcare in the United States.
Yeah, yeah. I'm so glad you brought that up. So Kenny Ballantyne is working on a documentary called Heal Us. And I believe a trailer, I saw the trailer. So there's a trailer out there that dropped, I think, within just the last week. And maybe I can dig up the link and we can share that in a second. But look for a trailer for Heal Us by Kenny Valentine. And then, yeah, that covers, the marches. It covers way more than Washington, but a lot of it was filmed here in Washington. You'll see a lot of familiar faces if you watch shows like Sabby and The Vanguard, where they've had members of the Red Berets and that sort of thing. And then I also did want to do a shout out. I forgot to mention right after the video, but I showed it quickly. They mentioned the Red Berets, and this one is mine, and it was knitted by a craftivist named Amber Holmes, who's a friend of one of our board members, Laura's friend. And so They're really high quality, a lot of care put into them, and I'm so honored that the Red Berets have offered to knit 800 of these, one for every signature captain, to really help folks feel, to realize that this is like a really human movement that's bigger than themselves, and that, it's just another one of those ways people contribute. Some people contribute by knitting, right? And I think it really
Mhm.
opens people's minds up. And the other thing about it is it's really no joke, right? These berets are actually the number one source of fundraising for whole Washington's campaign. So if you go to the Red Berets website and you buy one, you're funding our movement, and it is the number one fundraising item for us.
Absolutely. Eric, if you don't mind, if you can dig up the link for Red Berets, I can add that to the chat as well. Robert said, I believe exit polls showed every state supported Medicare for all, even in Republican states in the 2020 elections. Hmm. I believe so. I believe so. Yeah,
I know I
that's
saw a lot of them, and I know I saw Washington.
important to note. Oh, you found it. Thanks so much. And I want to get to Jacory really quick. Said, do you all think passing more city council resolutions in support would help with the national effort?
My answer is a resounding yes. I think it helps with national and state efforts, and I will say that I've been to some of those city council resolution meetings with Public Citizen, who's kind of the main organizer of those resolutions, and they strongly encourage the passage of resolutions that include state and national, because if you're going to all the effort to pass one, you can probably pretty easily get the other. If people say, well, I'd support one, but I don't support the other, they're usually actually trying to weasel out of supporting it at all. And a really important note is people don't always realize how evasive these politicians can be, because, federal legislators, like, say, Nancy Pelosi is one who allegedly, supports all of this, right? But just thinks the states should do it because she's a federal legislator. So go talk to state legislators, right? Well, then we go talk to state legislators and say, let's do it at state level. And they say, oh, this is a federal issue. Go talk to somebody in Congress, right? So that's why it's really important that we say, I know that this is a human right. It needs to be reinforced at all levels of government. And as one of my legislators, I expect you to be working on this. Um, so we really have to give people no room to weasel out. So I think the resolutions build that grassroots support. It gets it out in front of people's communities, and then it shows them that path from, city to state to national. Yes, of course we can have this if we just insist at every level of our government that, of course, this is a human right, and it is our job to ensure that it's happening.
Absolutely. Let's see if we can get that link from Eric. Eric, if you can put that link in the private chat, I can go ahead and play that video. Thanks so much. Okay, so here is the trailer for Healing Us, which is Kenny Ballantyne's documentary about healthcare in this country. So, yeah, you're going to see a couple of familiar faces here. So, here we go.
We have the best healthcare. We have the best healthcare money can buy. And if you don't have the money, you can't buy it, and you don't have it.
Yep.
Most people do believe that capitalism as we know it can and should work in health insurance and healthcare. The problem is it does not work like it does in other sectors of the economy. What we have in health insurance is a classic example of market failure.
There's actually not an incentive for a company to rush in and get you care when you need it. In fact, it's the opposite.
They're going to deny life-saving care in order to get that profit. I love my job. I love what I do. I love caring for my patients, but my hands are tied a lot of the time when people are the sickest and the most vulnerable.
We pay more in America for our healthcare than almost anybody in the world for worse results.
We have $4 trillion in the American healthcare system annually in the United States, which is by far more than any other country.
The point is that insurance companies do exceedingly well in this country, but one of the ways they do well is by charging us more for policies that every year are of less and less value.
They would rather make a sale than take care of a patient.
We know, all of us, if they say they don't believe anything's wrong, they're lying. All of us know something is wrong with the system.
When, Republicans and Democrats and socialists and libertarians all realize that it's not just the red team that's standing in the way of healthcare, it's also the blue team. It's much easier to all come together and be like, oh yeah, these politicians are screwing all of us.
No wife should ever have to choose between whether we're going to go in debt, which we are now, which we'll have to live with, or let my husband die.
And I had to make the conscious decision to drive home and tell my wife our boy was dead because he missed a $20 fucking payment. I vowed at his funeral that I'm going to make our lawmakers look me in the eye and see the consequences of their decisions.
When we devalue human life to the point where we don't even care that people are dying, then all of us are worth less as a whole.
We still don't have health care. We have Democrats who control all houses, and 68,000 people are still going to die this year.
In my view, we are at a real tipping point.
The way we fight back and the way you beat corporate power is with people power.
When we start doing this great thing of bringing healthcare through single payer financing to every American and help each other, we will heal the wounds and the fissures that are currently in the body politic of the United States of America.
Great things happen when people come together.
We need a political revolution, peaceful revolution.
Just know you're going to have a David and Goliath situation in your hands, but David can win.
You know you saved me. Could you save me one more?
Absolutely awesome.
Chills. Seriously, that music, that editing, so good.
Mm-hmm. And this is one of those things that I've said before. I really wish that Bernie Sanders and the rest of the squad were fighting just as hard for this now too.
Yeah, I struggle all the time with how to balance and articulate the gratitude that I have for, what I believe Bernie Sanders started. I think that many of the organizers at Whole Washington truly did. It was like Bernie Sanders lost and they all said, how do we keep this going, right? How do we keep not the Bernie Sanders going, right? The movement, not a man, as he often said, right? So how do we turn this into an actual movement? And I think that because he was planning on running again in 2020, we got to continue to have sort of this perception of unified movement with a leader. And I think that in the aftermath of that defeat, we've had to see where people actually are on all of this, right? And how they're going to be without that sort of unifying idea of a president who's going to pass all the things that, we believe we ought to have. And, it's hard to carry on sometimes, right? And we've lost people in the movement, right, who were with us, and because life happens and because things change, they don't stay with you. And I think the hardest thing in activism really is keeping going. And so if you're ever thinking about showing up, I really encourage you to do it, because you have no idea how tired some of these activist leaders are, because it's on them to hold the line and to take losses to the face. I mean, over and over and over again. I mean, activism is mostly losing. People,
Yep.
And so just by being a new person who shows up with a little bit of new energy and a little bit of new ideas, and who can provide the sense that you're not wasting your time and that there's people out there who want to work on this, you have no idea how much of a gift that can be to political organizers and activist leaders.
Absolutely, 100%. Delthea Simmons said, support for Medicare for all isn't the problem. A majority of voters in both major parties support Medicare for all, but they vote for people who work for donors, not voters. 100%.
I'll add, because it gets mentioned slightly in that trailer, but, it's not just the political support for Medicare for all nationally, but again, this is why I do focus on local, right? Because if you zoom in locally, right, and you say, okay, well, we have a trifecta here in Washington. We've actually had it since 2016. We have both houses and the governor's mansion, right? It's on the party platform. Bernie delegates like myself, I was a Bernie delegate, right? We work on the party platform and we fought to get Medicare for all in it, right? And so we have this situation, right? And even last year, the legislature passed a bill that basically said we're gonna pass a universal healthcare system. Don't worry about it. Give us a few years, but we're gonna do it. And it's like, okay, you almost couldn't provide more alleged support without actual support. It's like you couldn't do more to supposedly support it, but you haven't done anything to actually support it.
100%. Red Berets is here. We have to keep going. We are tired. Much love to you, Andre and Sabs for platforming whole Washington. Anytime. Always anytime. Andre, you're going to hang with me for one more story?
Absolutely.
All right. Let's go ahead and get into that. Okay. We are going to talk about Joe Biden signing this defense bill because this is the one that I warned you guys about a couple episodes ago that, it passed in the House, it passed in the Senate very quickly, mind you, very quickly. And the next stop was Joe Biden's desk. And so let me go ahead and share my screen here. So this is from Politico. Biden signed $768 billion defense policy bill that supersized his original Pentagon request. So the bill rejects Biden's $715 billion Pentagon budget request and instead calls for $740 billion for the Defense Department. So here we go. Joe Biden signed the $768 billion defense policy bill on Monday after Democrats and Republicans reject his initial Pentagon plans and endorse a major boost to military spending. Funny how that happens. The enacted of the Compromised National Defense Authorization Act, which rolled out in its final form and passed the House and Senate overwhelmingly this month, marks the 61st consecutive year the Pentagon policy legislation has become law. The White House announced Biden signed the bill into law in a statement. You already heard this part about what it rejects, what it adds. While Biden's request amounted to a military spending increase above the current levels, Republicans quickly panned the blueprint as insufficient to keep pace with inflation and military advances. Here we go. By China and Russia. Of course, they have to have a scapegoat, you guys. See what I'm saying? They have to have someone to blame. Most Democrats on Capitol Hill agreed, and both the House and the Senate backed further budget increases in their respective versions of the defense bill. So again, you have Democrats and Republicans agreeing on this. Two-party system, but they're really one party, one corporate party. In all, the bill authorizes $768 billion for national defense programs, which includes the Pentagon, nuclear weapons programs overseen by the Department of Energy. But the defense policy bill only authorizes spending and doesn't actually allocate any money. Lawmakers must still strike a deal to fund the government for the rest of the fiscal year for the defense increase to become reality. In the meantime, the Pentagon and other federal agencies are frozen at the previous year's funding levels cemented under former President Donald Trump. For defense, that means total funding that is lower than even the level that Biden proposed and that Congress rejected as not enough. The authorized budget boost will translate into billions more for weapons procurement, including more planes and ships than the Pentagon requested. You guys hear that? More planes and ships than the Pentagon requested. Top Democrats have touted a variety of legislative victories in the final bill, including an overhaul of how the military justice system handles sexual assault and other related crimes. The final legislation also incorporates language backed by Democrats that bars private funding for cross-state National Guard deployments, except during natural disaster emergency responses. So there's a lot to be said about, there's a lot to be proud of in this bill. Now, this is coming from House Armed Services Chair Adam Smith, who's a Democrat from Washington. He said this in a statement. Ultimately, this year's NDAA focuses on what makes our country strong, our economy, diversity, innovation, allies, and partners, democratic values, and our troops. All right, I'm going to come out here. And Andre, I want to get your take on this.
Yeah, well, you know, uh, it's not as in my wheelhouse as healthcare as an issue, but I think that, the thing that always strikes me when I read these stories, right, is one, they go to incredible lengths to do all sorts of just accounting tricks effectively to try to come up with a story that actually, if you squint your eyes a little bit, they actually didn't increase military spending. It's keeping up somehow or something like that. But I mean, everyone knows that the real story is that it always increases. Um, and then I guess the other thing is just on the politics of it, right? I don't remember if it was in the section that you read, but it specifically mentions that Republicans are very happy with this bill and that more Republicans voted for it than Democrats. And so you have to wonder, right, what was the point of winning the presidency in both chambers of Congress to get a bill that, was more agreeable to Republican, right? Not even necessarily Republican voters, of which I don't know that, we would say that Republicans as voters want increases in military spending, right? So it ended up favoring a majority of Republican legislators and what they wanted, rather than, the next best thing, which I guess would have been Democratic legislators. We're so far away from like what the actual people and their constituents want. But then, yeah, that last bit, Adam Smith, Democrat from Washington, House Armed Services Chair. I'm not Adam Smith's constituent, but I did want to shout out because I am a member of Seattle DSA, co-chair of Seattle DSA's healthcare working group. And, you know that I was also lead organizer of the Seattle March for Medicare for All. And one of the speakers that we had, Stephanie Gallardo, she was one of the speakers at the March for Medicare for All. She's an endorser, a huge supporter of Medicare for All in whole Washington. She also is not happy with this military budget, and she's running against Adam Smith. So I just, for the sake of civic information and keeping people informed, I just want everyone to know that this will be a primary challenge from the left of Adam Smith, at least on the topic of military budget. So be sure to check out Stephanie and, all the candidates in that race.
100%. Shout out to Mr. for the super chat. Please stop calling it the defense budget. Call it the Pentagon war budget, because that's what it is. 100%. Thank you so much for that, Mr. Yeah, so this is true. You notice they mentioned China and Russia in that article. As I told you guys, they have to have someone to blame it on for an excuse as to why they need that money. I've told you guys multiple times before, we are not at war. We just pulled troops out of Afghanistan and they increase funding to the Pentagon. That doesn't make any sense. So at this point, Joe Biden has actually given more funding than Donald Trump did. So this is what I meant when I said this a year ago. They're the same people. One is overt and one is covert, but they're still doing the same thing. They're both warmongers. You have Biden's giving them more money now. But anytime you bring up Medicare for all, anytime you bring up canceling student loan debt, things that people really need in this country, they come up with a million excuses as to why they can't do it. But they magically have $768 billion that they can give to the Pentagon, and no questions are asked.
Yeah, it's I would definitely put it in sort of like, you can only take on so many like top level issues, right? Medicare for all is a huge issue. The big pharma is a huge opponent to take on, but I mean, military industrial complex is basically right up there. It is as entrenched, it's deeply entrenched. It applies, like, again, we already mentioned all of the interests we have to take on for Medicare for all, or the Shama recall campaign. I mean, again, Boeing, huge defense contractor, right? And that, we feel that in the way that our politicians conduct themselves around some of those issues, to put it as politely as I can.
100%. Andre, thanks so much for stopping by. I really appreciate it. And guys, please make sure you share this information with as many people as possible. I do want to also put the link to Red Berets in the chat as well so that you can support. And Andre, how else can people support Whole Washington?
Yeah, well, I guess I threw out a bunch, but I would say that if you're watching this right now, if you're in Washington, number one thing would be to to sign up on the Signature Captain Interest Forum. We shared it a couple times, but sign up on that. We'll get in touch with you. You can attend an orientation, and I'll just say it's not like a commitment, right? So that would just be the best way to learn about the campaign and decide if you want to get involved or not. If you're not in Washington and you don't know that you can necessarily make the commitment to, have it on you to get 500 signatures, I would say check us out on social media. Check us out on Twitter. Send us a DM if you want to get involved in our social media pushes. And then last thing is, of course, donations are really helpful. So if you go to wholewashington.org/donate, I will just say that this organization, I mean, the amount that this organization has got done with very little money is incredible. Fundraising has been a challenge for us, straight up. So, it's something that we are working on and that we have plans to improve. But if you want to get involved now and make a really big difference, even small donations, and I would just emphasize recurring donations if you can. So $2, $3, $4, $5 a month. That's really how we're going to get ourselves out of this, is by kind of bootstrapping a little bit of crowd-funded regular donations for this campaign. And we don't need, we're not going to beat Big Pharma with money. I'll put it that way. We need money, right? But we're not going to beat them with money. So we need money to print petitions, right? It would be great if we could have some paid staffers to really work on this stuff all the time, right? I'm campaign director. I'm not paid right now. So, there's lots more that we could do to be more robust as an organization. We hope that if you donate money to us, that we will be able to show you all of the ways in which it makes a really big difference for the work we're doing.
Awesome. Andre, thanks so much for stopping by. I hope to see you again.
Right on. And yeah, somebody just put in the chat, next orientation is on January 2nd. In fact, I don't know. Here it is. I'll put a link to it. So, just dropped it in the chat. But yeah, if you want to just skip the whole interest form and talking to me on the phone and stuff, you can just sign right up for the next orientation, which is on Sunday. But again, thank you so much, Sabrina. It is so awesome to be able to show that video and just show regular people and let them take whatever interest in it they want. I feel really honored that you're willing to share that with your audience.
Anytime. Thanks so much.
Take care.
See ya. All right, guys. And Eric did put that link in the chat for Red Berets for Medicare for All. So you can go to that link if you want to purchase a Red Beret. That really helps them out a lot. The Red Berets are really nice, guys. I have one too. I should have put it on for the show. But they're really nice. And I mean, it's great work. I don't know how to knit. They do, and they do it well. So definitely support them in any way that you can. I want to go ahead and get to the final story tonight, which is about The View. And this is pretty interesting, I would say. I have noticed, and you probably have too, that ever since Meghan McCain has left The View, they seem to have a problem filling her seat, right? So, and by that, what I mean is filling her seat with another conservative, because that is the conservative seat on the show. And they've had hosts that will come in. There may be one host for 1 week. The next week, it's a different host. And they're kind of doing this rotating conservative host thing right now because they can't find a permanent conservative host. But I'm going to show you why they can't. There's other things that are going on. And this goes back to what I've told you guys before about the narrative that they want to present, that the show and the network want to present. So I'm going to share my screen here. This is also from Politico as well. The View struggles to find a Republican. What do you know? Here we go. Before taking off for the holidays, the 4 long-standing hosts of The View had a message for executive producer Brian Teta. We're tired of the rotating cast of Republican guest hosts. This is interesting. When Meghan McCain departed in August, Teta initially told The Wrap that he was taking a little time to find a replacement. Since then, ABC has tried out a variety of conservative fill-ins, including S.E. Cupp, Alyssa Farah, Morgan Ortagus, Condoleezza Rice, that was funny, sorry, Carly Fiorina, and Gretchen Carlson. Nearly 6 months in, the show has yet to settle on a permanent replacement. And now, the longtime co-hosts Joy Behar, Whoopi Goldberg, and Sunny Houston are upping the pressure to pick a successor and voicing their displeasure at having to introduce new guest hosts week after week in a seemingly endless process that they'll find disruptive to the flow of the show. Right now, we still need a really conservative voice. Houston told New York Magazine in November, and we need someone that is not, this is interesting, duplicative of anyone else on the panel. According to a spokesperson for The View, the program will continue to audition potential hosts in the new year, bringing some women back for a second turn. Farrah will return in January, and the show will bring in other big names like Barry Weiss. I'm sorry. And Lisa Ling, neither of whom exactly fit the conservative label. I was about to say, Lisa Ling definitely does not. While the network continues to conduct focus groups on the audience's reaction. Sources close to the show said that the search has stalled as executives struggle to find a conservative cast member who checks all the right boxes. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. This is what I was telling you about fitting their narrative. So they're picky. So here we go. They will not consider a Republican who is a denier of the 2020 election results, embrace the January 6th events. I have to say events because YouTube, it's going to ping me for that. Or is seen as flirting too heavily with fringe conspiracy theories or the MAGA wing of the GOP. But at the same time, the host must have credibility with mainstream Republicans, many of whom still support Donald Trump. They're asking for a lot. I don't know. What do you guys think? Like, that's a lot. Can't have any of those things and still supposed to be supported by mainstream Republicans. The problem is that they bring people on under the mantle that this woman is a conservative when they're never Trump, so they don't represent the country. This is coming from one of the rotating guest hosts. At the same time, the anti-Trump conservative can't be seen as too chummy with the other co-hosts, as the network's market research shows that the audience wants to see the women spar. Sources said that this has hurt the chances of Ana Navarro, a regular fill-in on the conservative chair who worked as a surrogate for Joe Biden in 2020. She is perceived by the producers as too friendly with the other host and not a traditional Republican. They are really picky here. They are really looking for a unicorn, said a former show staffer. They want someone who is going to fight, but not too hard, because they don't want it to be ugly and bickering. I'm going to comment about that when I come out of this article. It doesn't help that there's a perception that whoever sits in the conservative host slot is on borrowed time, with prominent Republican former hosts like Nicole Wallace, Elizabeth Hasselbeck, Abby Huntsman, and McCain leaving the show with claims of being bullied by their co-hosts and ABC executives on set and off, while veterans like Goldberg and Behar have thrived. Sources said that the show was eager to recruit young libertarian Kat Timpf, but she turned them down because the show's reputation for treating conservatives poorly and her contract with Fox. Timpf declined to comment to Playbook. Others have said that the show has a responsibility to fill the conservative chair with a strong Republican co-host ahead of the midterms if they are going to be a credible political talk show. Our plans are on track, and we continue to look for the right person to join our panel of smart, dynamic women. We look forward to welcoming guest co-hosts for return appearances and introducing new names into the mix for the new year. Okay, here's my take on this. I have a couple things to say. Again, I think that number one, they're being too picky. They want a conservative in that seat, but they want a certain type of conservative. They want someone who's going to push back, but not too much because they don't want it to be ugly. At the same time, they don't want someone who's really pro-Trumpish. They want you to be a traditional Republican, but still at the same time, keep in mind that there's still a lot of Trump supporters in the country. They're asking for a lot, right? And they wonder why they are having difficulty filling that spot. Now, one thing I will tell you from what I've seen with this show in the past, everyone I've seen come into that seat has left on bad terms. Every single one of them. I know Abby, had a baby, but then she came back after the baby, but they've all had these issues with other hosts on the show. Meghan McCain's was probably the worst, I think. She interviewed about it after the show. And when it comes to Elizabeth Hasselbeck, her and Rosie O'Donnell did not get along on that show. In fact, they fought a lot. Obviously, that was going to bring about conflict. Elizabeth Hasselbeck is conservative. She has conservative, beliefs. Rosie O'Donnell obviously is not. There were issues. Sometimes there were issues where sexuality came up on the show. Obviously, you have someone like Rosie O'Donnell who's LGBTQ, and then you have Elizabeth Hasselbeck. Obviously, they were going to butt heads, right? So eventually it got to the point where for Elizabeth, it just became too ugly and too much. She left. Everyone who was sat in that seat has had to go. So again, this goes back to the narrative that I was telling you about before. It's not just a group of women, 5 women, I believe it's 5 of them, supposed to be 5, sitting at a table and just talking about what they really feel and what they believe. They have a script. They have a little earbud in their ear. They have producers telling them to go to commercial break, to cut. If you pay close attention, you can tell that Whoopi's reading something from like teleprompter, right? You can tell. I know I've done this before, so I can tell when someone's reading from a teleprompter or a cue card. So what I've really seen is that you have a show that's supposed to be a liberal show. I don't even know if I call it that so much, but they want one conservative to sit with them because they want that. They have to have that other side, right? So here's my take on it. Why not have 2 liberals, 2 leftists? Why not throw a socialist on that show? Why not throw 2 conservatives on that show? Add in a libertarian. Just mix it all up. Why not do that? Why? Because that would not fit their narrative. If they did that, could you imagine if they put a socialist on The View? Could you imagine? Give me someone in the chat, a female who's a socialist, well known. Could you imagine? That'd be a show I would really like to watch. Put a libertarian on there, a socialist. They're not going to put a communist on there. Delthea Simmons said The View is a liberal show, a neoliberal show. There you go. Exactly. Because let's all remember how those hosts of that show treated Bernie Sanders when he came on, when he was running. They were very nasty towards him. Anyone that was running on a message that they wanted to give money or give goods to the American people, they were very nasty to. This is why they were rude to Marianne Williamson, because she wanted to do reparations. They were rude to Andrew Yang the first time he came on because he wanted to do UBI. They were rude to Bernie Sanders because he wanted to give everyone health care in this country. They were really nice to Joe Biden, of course, because he's basically like them. And the network is going to tell them to be nice to Joe Biden. So they don't want someone on that show who is not going to go along with the narrative. And then you have to ask yourself, how real is it? Because the name of the show is called The View. Why aren't we getting everyone's view? Why aren't we hearing different perspectives? They try to convince you that you are, but you're really not. Like, I know what they're going to say before they say it. I always know that Sonny is going to be the one that tries to make the connection back to, well, for African Americans, and she's going to stay in that lane, but still always drag it a little bit to the right, right? She's also going to tell you that things need to be moderate. I already know that Whoopi Goldberg is going to be the one that's like, this doesn't really make any sense to me. She's going to be the one that's kind of pretend like they're in the middle, but still will never go far to the left. Pay close attention to that. Pay very close attention to that. Joy Behar, who actually, when Bernie was running in 2016, she actually supported Bernie Sanders. And when she was called out about that, when he ran in 2020, she tried to go back and say, oh, well, I was just joking around. No, you weren't joking around. The producers wanted you to change your rhetoric because that didn't work with their narrative. So this is how it works, ladies and gentlemen. This is how mainstream media works. I've been in news studios when I was in college. There's teleprompters, there's scripts. They're told what to say. They may be able to ad lib here and there, but as far as the narrative goes, they're told what narrative they are going to give. So if that is the case, are we really getting their view? Are we really getting their perspective? No. So I remember that show used to be a lot different when it first started, back when Barbara Walters used to be on that show. Very different back then. They didn't focus as much on politics back then. Somewhere along the line, it became The Political View. And I think that was after Obama won. But their job, again, is to keep you in the duopoly. This is why you won't see them have certain people on that show. Pay very close attention to that, too. Okay, thanks so much, Eric. I'll play that after the show. Thank you, Paul, for the super chat. How about a real, more radical view with Sabby, Bree, Fiorella, Halper, Kim for the more libertarian point of view? That would be lit, Paul. That would be lit. Listen, let me tell you something. No network would take that on. YouTube, maybe, but I can tell you right now, no mainstream network would. No. The Daily Show used to be really different. Yep. And they moved over to the neoliberal side as well. Because they know this is what sells. Those are the talking points that they want you to have. And it's interesting because a lot of people watch The View. And one of the things that I would tell you when it comes to political advice, please do not watch The View. They are horrible at it. They give terrible information. I still remember that time when Whoopi was talking about Andrew Yang. This is after he came on the first time, after they grilled him the first time, right? Now all of a sudden, Whoopi Goldberg says, this guy wants to do UBI. Why didn't anyone come up with this before? I'm like, really? Really? Martin Luther King had that idea, right? You know that, right? And it's funny because when Andrew Yang was on the show, Andrew Yang even said that. Whoopi was sitting right there. Do you guys see how this narrative that they just do, how they try to play us, they think we're dumb? Really? This guy thinks it's good to give the American people money. This guy is saying we need to help out the working class people. Why didn't anyone say that before? Now that came from Whoopi Goldberg. Bernie Sanders had been saying that for years and he said it on the show. But when Bernie said it, she was against it. You see how fake? It's so fake, you guys. I have a really good memory. So I remember these talking points, how they would change them when certain people came on. When Tulsi Gabbard came on, they were horrible towards her too. Anyone who wants to do something for the American people. Now, she wanted to end these forever wars. That is not the talking point that they wanted to have on that show. Because at the end of the day, they are still pro-imperialist and they are still pro-war. Meghan McCain used to brag about that. But they're all really not that different. And that's what I want you guys to understand. Whether they bring on a new conservative or whether they have on Meghan McCain come back on. At the end of the day, all of them sitting at that table, they all want the same thing, and that is to keep capitalism. Still pro war, still pro imperialism. I want to give you another example and then I'm going to head out. I remember watching one time when Sonny Hostin was on there, and there was the complaint about the money in politics, electoral politics, the big money. Do you know Sonny Hostin, civil rights advocate? She looked at the camera and said, but I don't know. It's always been like that. I was like, really, Sonny? Really? Because when the issue of police brutality came up and someone said, well, the police have always had qualified immunity, they've always had that. Sonny Hostin's response was, well, just because they've always had that doesn't mean it needs to stay that way. It needs to change. You guys see these talking points? Memory. See how it's okay for it to stay the same when it's involved electoral politics? They'll let her play the lane of, yes, it needs to change when it comes to race relations because she's Afro-Latina. But when it comes to electoral politics, no, they were not going to let her take that stance there. The talking point that she was going to have is, but that's the way it's always been. She went on to say that she liked Beto, didn't even know why. So you just want to vote for him just because? I like Beto. I don't know why, but I really like him. And this is who people are taking their political advice from. People will watch that show and they will take political advice from The View. And as I just told you, at the end of the day, it's really not their view. It's really not theirs. It's scripted. So it's just really interesting to me. I want to shout out some of the comments on Rockfin as well. Roger, if you want to go ahead and I'm so sorry. Eric, if you want to go ahead and put up Roger's comments. I actually called Eric Roger, you guys. That's interesting. Here we go. Thanks for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. Sabby, I am in the past starting to watch at 7:10, so I'm 10 minutes behind. Biden confirmed today what I've been saying. He said he ain't gonna do a GD thing. Get it done in your state. So glad you are giving light to this ballot initiative healthcare soldier. Maine is doing the same thing. Can't wait till you interview someone from there. Can't wait even more when you start one in Massachusetts. Petition deadline is July 8th. Thank you so much for that, Roger. And also, I want you to think about this. The more signatures you get to cross that threshold to get on the ballot, the less people you'd have to educate in the future about it, since they'd already be familiarized to it. Going above and beyond on the front end, giving you way less work on the back end. Like if there were 100 people who lived in Washington State and you need 15 signatures to get on the ballot, then get 51 guaranteeing passage. I don't trust New York State legislator leadership on passing the New York Health Act, especially with Hochul not pushing for it. Really do think it'll be a ballot initiative state like Maine and Washington State. That'll set the tone. We need to form a progressive multi-state grassroots financing network to push progressive ballot initiatives in each of the 24 states that allows them. States like mine who don't allow ballot initiatives definitely need to help, since it'll put heat on my legislature to get it done. Well said, Roger Meadows, and thank you so much for the tips as well. There were two comments here that I had highlighted I want to get to. Noli D said, did you guys see Blue Moon's video got pulled and she got a strike over her college student loan boycott? I did see that. I reached out to her and was asking her if they just pulled it. I think she responded back, said they just pulled it, gave her a warning this time. So she should be okay. And then Everett McCreven said, I know this is unrelated, but John Madden passed away. Oh my gosh. Wait a second. Are you serious? Let me pull this up really quick. I'm just going to see, because, you know, sometimes there's these hoax, you know, they've tried to kill, what's his face? They've tried to kill Zach, the guy that played Zach from Saved by the Bell. They tried to kill him like 5 times. Let me just see. John Madden news. I just want to make sure. Oh yeah, they confirmed it. They did confirm it. Wow. Do you guys know? I don't know if everyone in the chat even knows. Does everyone know who John Madden is? I know who he is because I watch a lot of sports. I'm going to share my screen here. So yeah, ESPN has confirmed it. NFL Hall of Fame coach, broadcasting icon John Madden dies at 85 years old. I didn't realize he was that old. Wow. I don't see where it says cause of death, so maybe they don't have that information. It just says he died unexpectedly and did not detail a cause. So hopefully we'll find out what happened with him. Gosh, wow, that is so random and weird. That's unfortunate. I don't know if you guys know, but there was this thing called the Madden curse. Some of you guys in the chat that watch football, you probably heard about this. So the curse was that if you were an athlete and you were on the cover of Madden Sports, like one of the John Madden video games, that your upcoming season was not going to be good. And I think it all started because some athletes were on the cover and that they'd have a bad season where they get injured and they're out for the rest of the season. I think Tom Brady broke that curse because he was on there a couple years ago and I was like, oh no, Brady's on the cover of Madden. This is it. This is it. But Tom Brady went on to play very well that year. I actually think we won the Super Bowl that year. I have to go back and check. We've won so many. I can't keep up. I can't keep up. Want to give a quick shout out to everyone who's a patron. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate your support. These are all the people who are Sabby Sabs patrons. You can become a member, a Sabby, a Sabster, or the ultimate category. Guys, thank you so much. I really do appreciate all of your support. It really does help me out a lot. So thank you very much. And I also have their names scrolling at the bottom of the screen now with help from Eric Thomas. I really appreciate that, Eric. Thank you so much because I couldn't figure it out. Figure out how to do it. Someone else said that, oh yes, and Archbishop Desmond Tutu died on Boxing Day too as well. Yep. Yeah. I don't know. You say they come in threes. I mean, that's what people say. So I don't know, but wow, that's unfortunate. But he's a funny guy. Like, I don't know if you guys have heard John Madden speak, but he's funny. I got one more comment here on Rockfin. Thanks so much for the tip on Rockfin, Roger Meadows. The View was mean to Bernie, not because he wanted to give everyone health care, but because they feared Bernie would have taxed the duty out of the rich. I agree. I agree. Thanks so much for that, Roger, as well. Yeah, that is another thing that he wanted to do. So, guys, it's 8:19. I'm coming up around my time. I do want to give you some updates here. So this Friday, New Year's Eve, I'm streaming all day. It'll start at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and we'll go to 1 a.m. into New Year's Day. It'll be me and KRTD Media. We're doing a New Year's Eve celebration and we're going to count down the top 15 news stories from 2021. We did a poll on Twitter. People responded to the poll. I think you'll be surprised at some of the results. So that should be fun. I will be popping on at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time that night on New Year's Eve because I have something planned, with my husband like earlier on. But should be a fun time. Join us. Get all dressed up. Get your champagne or whatever it is that you do and have fun. And then another thing that I have coming up, Caleb Maupin will be here next Friday. He's coming on to talk about his book, BreadTube. I don't know if you guys have seen this over Twitter. It has been trending. He has revealed some information. Max Blumenthal has written an article about it with the Gray Zone. So he's going to be on next Friday to talk about that. And we're going to get down to the nitty gritty of that. And 2022 announcements. I am working on putting together a women's summit sometime late February, early March. That is my hope. So I have been reaching out to people on Twitter. Actually, I posted on Twitter, who would you like to see on it? I got a lot of responses, a lot of different names. So I'm going to go through that list and contact people to see if they would like to be a part of that summit. It should be great. I really want to talk about women's issues and educate people about those, especially women's health, labor. By labor, I mean job labor, not birth labor. But we could talk about that too under health. I also would like to have a group of activists on as well that are fighting for women's rights. I just want to educate people about the things that women have to go through in this country, still have to go through in this country, and how we can help each other and be there for a support system as well. So I'm working on that. So hopefully that will come into fruition here. And another thing that I'm hoping to have come up in 2022, I'm also going to start doing Patreon only videos. I'm going to start out probably doing like 2 a month. Those will just be uploaded into Patreon for people who are patrons, and then see how it goes from there. So that's what I have planned so far. Ethnic women's liberation will continue. We'll be back in January. And other than that, guys, it has been a fun, eventful, busy year. And I appreciate all of your support. I'll be back tomorrow, and then you'll see me again on New Year's Eve on Friday. So, you know how we do this. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.